Welcome to Galactic Conundrums, where the line between predator and prey blurs in the most unexpected way. Join Captain Lawson aboard Space Station Omega-7, where humanity's role in the galaxy takes an unprecedented turn thanks to 3 wild cubs and a hidden smuggling plot. What began as a simple diplomatic mission quickly becomes a thrilling test of survival, proving that even the most dangerous creatures can show surprising discipline and purpose. Ready to see how this chaos leads to humanity's new place among the stars? Let's dive in. The camera floats through the vastness of space, distant stars twinkling like forgotten secrets. Slowly, a colossal structure comes into view, orbiting a far-off planet. It's Omega-7, a sprawling space station that hums with activity. The station's design is an intricate blend of sleek metallic surfaces and shimmering, almost otherworldly patterns, a testament to the many species that call this place home. Captain Alex Steelheart Lawson, narrating. Welcome to Omega-7, a sanctuary among the stars, where the cosmos' most diverse creatures come together. Here, trade is conducted in whispers, negotiations are fought with glances, and alliances are born from the strangest of places. But beyond the grand halls and glittering docking bays, there's something much more peculiar about this station. The camera zooms in on Captain Lawson, standing in the control room, surrounded by windows that show the vastness of space. His face is weathered but calm, eyes sharp as if always aware of the delicate balance he maintains. In his uniform, he carries an air of authority, but also something deeper, a quiet, unshakable resilience. Captain Lawson. Most stations like this, they are busy, chaotic. The air always thick with the tension of new deals being struck, old alliances tested. But me? I'm here for a different kind of chaos. A job no one else wants. See, I'm the unofficial caretaker of the galaxy's most dangerous babies. The ones no one else dares touch. And that includes the offspring of creatures who, well, have more teeth than your worst nightmares. As Lawson speaks, the camera cuts to various species aboard the station. A shimmering figure with translucent skin moves through the corridors, its form shifting in and out of visibility. A hulking creature with armored scales hisses as it passes by, its eyes glowing in the dim light. The sounds of multiple languages swirl together, as beings of all shapes and sizes walk, float, and crawl past each other. Captain Lawson. From the smallest, most delicate hatchlings to the savage cubs of apex predators, I'm the one they trust with their young. And trust me, in this line of work, trust is a word you don't throw around lightly. You might wonder why anyone would leave a predator's offspring in the care of humans, us, the ones with all the stories about taming wild beasts. Well, it's not just our reputation that gets the job done. It's the one thing we've all learned, the one thing that makes us unique. A brief silence falls, and the camera zooms in on a small, silver object resting on Lawson's desk, an old, worn toy that seems oddly out of place against the advanced technology surrounding it. Lawson's fingers hover over it before he continues. Captain Lawson. It's because we care. Not just for our own, but for every living thing, no matter how dangerous. And when the danger comes in the form of sharp claws, venomous bites, or jaws that could tear through the toughest of armors, that's when humanity steps up. Because we've always been the ones to say, let's see what we can do with this. The scene lingers for a moment, giving the audience a chance to absorb the weight of Lawson's words, the chilling yet heroic undertone to his work. The eerie hum of the station fades as the camera pans back out to the stars, leaving a feeling of quiet anticipation. What dangers lie ahead? And what will it take for humanity to face them? The metallic groan of the docking bay doors echoes through the station as they slowly slide open, revealing a scene that sends an uneasy chill through anyone who dares to watch. The air grows still, the hum of the station dimming as if it too is holding its breath. Emerging from the shadows of the dimly lit corridor, the Nexus predators step into the light. Captain Lawson, narrating. There's something about them, something that doesn't sit right with you when you first see them. They are not like anything you've ever encountered before. The Nexus predators. The stuff of nightmares. Imagine, if you will, a creature born of the most dangerous, primal elements, an apex predator. Now take that, and make it intelligent beyond measure. The creatures step into the docking bay, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath them, each movement deliberate and menacing. Their towering figures cast long, foreboding shadows, their scales glimmering in the low light like obsidian covered in a slick of oil. As they move, the scales catch the light, shimmering in an array of iridescent colors, blues, greens, and purples that seem to ripple with their every step, almost as if they are alive in their own right. Captain Lawson. Imagine a beast, 9 feet tall, covered in thick, jagged scales that could stop a bullet. Teeth like knives, sharp enough to pierce through steel. Claws long enough to tear through the hull of a starship. And yet, they walk with a grace that defies their size, as if they were born to rule. The camera lingers on the details. Each Nexus predator is like a living fortress, their muscular bodies rippling under their armored skin. Their eyes, cold and calculating, seem to pierce the very fabric of the station as they scan the surroundings. Their movements are cautious, yet filled with purpose, as though they are fully aware of the power they wield. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice lower. These aren't just any predators. The Nexus are a civilization, a species born from pure instinct, yet they have crafted a society that rivals any in the galaxy. These creatures, capable of tearing their enemies apart in seconds, are as intelligent as they are deadly. And here they are, standing in front of me, asking for help. The 2 adult Nexus predators, their size dominating the room, stand with a certain regal poise. Their eyes scan the room, taking in every detail, every person, every possible threat. Behind them, 3 cubs follow, smaller versions of their terrifying parents. The cubs' eyes gleam with the same predatory focus, yet there's a wildness to them, an energy that promises chaos. Captain Lawson, narrating. But what's most unsettling? These creatures, These predators of the highest order don't want violence. No, they are here for something much more baffling. They are here to ask for a babysitter. The adult Nexus predators look at Captain Lawson with an air of silent authority, their gaze unblinking. One of them, larger than the rest, steps forward, its movements smooth, calculated, almost hypnotic. It opens its mouth, revealing rows of teeth that glint under the station's lights, but instead of a growl or a roar, it speaks with a deep, resonating voice. Ambassador T. Craw, the larger of the Nexus adults, speaking in a slow, deliberate tone. Human, we have come to request your assistance. Our offspring require your unique expertise. The words hang in the air for a moment, the stillness of the docking bay amplifying the absurdity of the request. The cubs, though small in comparison to their parents, are already causing a scene. They seem oblivious to the gravity of the situation, their playful movements a stark contrast to the tension surrounding them. Captain Lawson, narrating. Trust me, no one would ever guess that these creatures, these apex predators who rule their corner of the galaxy, would need help with something so ordinary. But here they are. Asking me to look after their young. As if the sight of a human taking care of a baby predator, a creature capable of bringing down an entire battalion with a single swipe, was somehow normal. The cubs begin to squabble playfully, tumbling over each other in a chaotic display of energy. Their tiny claws swipe at the air, their sharp teeth clicking together as they mimic the combat techniques of their parents' play, fighting with deadly seriousness. The sound is unsettling, like a vicious game of tag, only this time, the stakes are far higher. Captain Lawson, narrating. I'm not going to lie. My heart was pounding. It wasn't fear. It was the strange realization that, despite everything we know about these creatures, these terrifying predators actually trusted us. Us, with their cubs. Their children. A human. The one species that's known for, well, being a bit crazy when it comes to caring for dangerous creatures. Captain Lawson stands frozen for a brief moment, his gaze fixed on the cubs, their wild antics echoing through the vast space. There's a strange tension in the air, an energy that feels as if the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting for what will happen next. The room falls into an eerie silence as the towering figure of Ambassador T. Craw, the leader of the Nexus predators, steps forward. Her movements are smooth, fluid, predatory in the way she controls the space around her. Her eyes, bright and cold as ice, lock onto Captain Lawson's with an unsettling intensity. Captain Lawson, narrating. When you stand before a creature like Ambassador T. Craw, it's impossible not to feel the weight of her presence. She's not just any predator. She is the leader of an entire species, an apex ruler whose every step commands authority. And yet, here she is, standing in front of me, asking for the one thing that no one would ever expect. Ambassador T. Craw's massive frame is imposing, but there's a strange elegance to her, as if she is both a weapon and a leader. Her scales catch the light as she speaks, their obsidian hues rippling with each subtle shift. Her secondary jaw clicks softly, a low, sharp sound that reverberates through the stillness of the bay, a gesture of communication among her kind, both respectful and unnerving. Ambassador T. Craw, in a voice that vibrates with power. Human, we are in need of your assistance. Our offspring are unruly, unmanageable. During this critical summit, they have proven to be too much for us to handle. We seek your species' unique skill set to care for them. The words hang in the air, thick with a sense of disbelief. The creatures in front of Captain Lawson are a symbol of power, of strength, and yet they are asking for help with something so simple. Something so human. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice incredulous. Help. They needed help. It's almost laughable. These creatures, masters of the galaxy, the predators that could turn a starship into scrap metal in the blink of an eye, asking for something so mundane. It was like being asked to babysit a storm, a force of nature, that could wipe you out with a single thought. But I could see it in their eyes. There was no other option. And despite my disbelief, I knew what I had to do. Ambassador T. Craw's eyes soften, just slightly, as she observes Lawson's reaction. She knows he is not entirely convinced, but she is patient, understanding that in this moment, she holds the power of diplomacy. She steps closer, her claws clicking against the cold steel floor, each step like a deliberate statement of the fact that her species is not to be underestimated. Ambassador T. Craw, her voice lowering, with a touch of rare vulnerability. Our young are wild, unpredictable. They do not understand the gravity of the summit. They only know hunger, play, and chaos. The leaders of the galaxy are here, on this station. And we must be at our most controlled, our most composed. But our cubs, they are distracted, disruptive. Captain Lawson watches the cubs, who are still play fighting, tumbling over each other with gleeful abandon. Their sharp claws and teeth are harmless for now, but the unpredictability in their movements, the way they dart about, pouncing and climbing, reminds him of a force of nature that cannot be tamed by force alone. Captain Lawson, narrating. There was something raw in her voice. Something I hadn't expected. These terrifying, calculating creatures, they were vulnerable in this moment. They were like parents, in their own way, struggling to maintain control over their own wild children. It wasn't something I'd ever imagined, but there it was. The Nexus predators, asking for help with their cubs. Ambassador T. Cross steps back, her posture remaining commanding but now tinged with a subtle desperation. She lowers her head slightly, a gesture that, for a creature of her stature, is almost unthinkable, yet it holds the weight of centuries of wisdom. Ambassador T. Craw. I would not ask this of you, human, if there were another option. But this summit, these negotiations are vital. The future of our people depends on it. If we fail, the consequences will be catastrophic. Please, assist us. Keep them occupied. Keep them safe. We place them in your hands. Captain Lawson stands silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over him. The words "we place them in your hands" echo in his mind. The cubs, small but fierce, now seem like more than just mischievous creatures. They are pawns in a much larger game, and the fate of an entire species may rest in his ability to manage them. A shiver runs down his spine as he realizes the responsibility he is about to take on. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a deep sigh. And just like that, it became clear. I had no choice. No one else was going to do it. The Nexus predators, these creatures who could tear through any enemy with ease, had put their faith in me. In us. And for better or worse, that meant we were about to take on a responsibility no human had ever been asked to shoulder before. The scene hangs in the balance for a moment longer, the cubs continuing to play behind T-Craw, their small roars echoing in a vast space. Lawson steps forward, his resolve hardening. Captain Lawson, aloud. I'll do it. But there's one thing you need to understand: your cubs may be your future, but they are also wild. Keeping them in check will take more than toys and treats. It will take everything I've got. The dim light of the station's corridors flickers slightly as Captain Lawson and his assistant, Bob, enter the recreation module. The room is vast, it's sterile, metallic walls hum with the quiet buzz of the station's energy. The space feels cold and clinical, but Lawson knows that what happens in this room is anything but ordinary. Today, it will become a place where even the most dangerous of creatures must be tamed. Captain Lawson, narrating. This was going to be a challenge. The Nexus cubs, wild, unpredictable, and capable of turning the room into rubble with a single swipe. But we had a task ahead of us. We had to create a safe space for them. A place where their chaos wouldn't destroy the delicate balance of the station, or worse, get someone killed. Bob, holding a data pad filled with instructions, steps into the middle of the room, looking around nervously. His fingers hover over the pad, scanning for the schematics they'd been given. Lawson begins pacing, his boots clanging softly against the floor, his mind racing with every possible outcome. Bob, with a nervous laugh. You sure about this, Lawson? I mean, we're talking about Nexus predators with cubs. Tiny little killing machines. This is insane. Captain Lawson turns to Bob, his eyes steady and serious. The room feels tense, as if even the walls are waiting for them to make the right move. Captain Lawson. Insane? Maybe. But we don't have a choice. These cubs are not like anything we've seen before. We're here to keep them entertained, keep them from turning this place into a war zone. And if we fail? Well, we don't get to walk out of here. The camera shifts to the far side of the room, where a set of reinforced barriers and containment fields are being slowly activated. A soft hum fills the air as the force fields shimmer into existence. Captain Lawson inspects the equipment, his fingers running along the metallic edges, his expression unreadable. These barriers, however advanced, are just a temporary solution. What truly matters now is the toys. Bob pulls out a large box filled with strange, metallic objects, heavy-duty toys built to withstand the strength of creatures far beyond human capacity. One by one, he begins placing them in the room. There are spheres that light up when touched, bouncy balls made from a material tougher than anything Lawson has ever seen, and large, reinforced cubes that seem more like small, impossible puzzles than something a cub could play with. Every item is a testament to the absurdity of this situation. Bob, glancing over at Lawson. You sure these will be enough? I mean, we're talking about cubs that can tear through starship hulls. Can we really babysit them with this? Captain Lawson, narrating, with a faint chuckle. I don't think babysit is the right word for what we're doing here. But yes, Bob. This is what we've got. These toys aren't just playthings, they are tools. Reinforced, built to take a beating, and designed to keep the cubs engaged without letting them destroy everything in sight. The camera cuts to a toy sphere, bouncing erratically across the floor, its movements unpredictable, mimicking the chaos the cubs will inevitably bring. Lawson watches, his brow furrowing as he visualizes the scene ahead. The toys seem comically insufficient when faced with such raw, primal power. Captain Lawson, narrating. Reinforced toys. Environmental controls. A playpen made from the toughest materials we have. But there's something the schematics won't show, something no protocol can prepare us for. No one knows how the cubs will react. No one knows how far we'll have to go to keep them distracted. Bob sets down a cube-shaped puzzle, which immediately activates, humming with strange energy as it whirs to life. Lawson steps back, eyeing the toy with a critical gaze. It spins in place, lights flickering as if anticipating the challenge ahead. But there's an underlying tension, a subtle sense that no amount of preparation will ever truly account for the unknown. Bob, frowning. This doesn't feel like enough. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but how do you play games with something that could kill you by accident? A toy isn't going to stop these little monsters if they get a bit too excited. Captain Lawson pauses, looking at Bob. The weight of his words hangs heavily in the air. They both know what's at stake. And yet, there's a strange sense of inevitability to the whole thing. No matter how dangerous the cubs are, this is their only shot. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice lowering. Maybe we're not supposed to stop them. Maybe we're just supposed to keep them from destroying everything around them. Maybe that's enough. But if I'm wrong, if they go too far, then we'll see how well these toys hold up under pressure. He stands still for a moment, the faint hum of the station and the glowing force fields forming an eerie backdrop. The toys seem like pitiful offerings in the face of such raw, untamed energy. But there is no turning back now. The room is ready. The cubs are coming. The door to the recreation area hisses open with a soft, almost eerie sound. The air in the room shifts, growing thick with an anticipatory tension. Captain Lawson stands near the control panel, his hand hovering over the safety locks, while Bob watches the doorway nervously. Then, like a storm breaking, the cubs burst into the room, their movements a blur of sharp claws and flashing teeth. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice tense. There's a moment, just before everything goes wrong, where you think just maybe this won't be so bad. But then, the cubs step in. And that's when you realize how foolish it was to think you could contain something this wild. The first cub leaps onto the ground with a sound like thunder, its claws scraping against the floor with unnerving precision. It looks around the room, its gaze wild, and then without warning pounces toward the nearest reinforced toy. With a speed too fast for the eye to follow, it knocks the toy across the room with a single swipe, sending it tumbling through the air. The toy crashes into a wall with a loud bang, sending sparks flying. Captain Lawson, gritting his teeth. Easy, kid, easy. The second cub, smaller but no less ferocious, races up the wall. Its claws grip the smooth surface with terrifying ease, and within seconds, it's scaling the entire height of the room as if it were nothing more than a jungle gym. The lights flicker slightly as the cub reaches the top, its eyes scanning the room from above. It leaps, soaring effortlessly toward a pile of reinforced toys, landing with a thud that reverberates throughout the space. Bob, his voice shaky, as he watches in disbelief. This is insane. They are not even trying to play. They are testing everything. They are testing us. The third cub, the largest and most aggressive, watches its siblings with an almost calculating gaze before letting out a shrill roar. Its voice rattles through the room, and then, as if drawn by an invisible force, it charges at the nearest wall, its body slamming into the surface with enough force to shake the floor beneath our feet. The impact leaves a noticeable dent in the reinforced material, and Lawson's stomach twists as he watches the damage unfold. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice low and tense. There's no hesitation in them. No instinct to hold back. They are predators through and through. The way they move, the way they calculate the space around them, they are not playing, they are exploring their environment. And that exploration could end in disaster. The cubs scatter in different directions, each one seeking to test a different corner of the room. One of them swipes at a containment barrier, claws scraping along its surface with a screeching noise that sends a ripple through the force field. It snarls in frustration, pawing at the air as if trying to break through. Bob, panicking. They are going to tear everything apart. The toys, everything. They are not interested in toys. The cub on the wall leaps down, its claws raking against the ceiling panels as it clings to the surface, using it as a launching point. It careens through the air, landing squarely on the pile of reinforced toys, and immediately begins to claw at the cube puzzle, its teeth sinking into the material with alarming strength. Sparks fly as the cube begins to crack, and the soft hum of the station's energy fluctuations grows louder, indicating the toy's impending failure. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice tight. We'd given them the best we had. The strongest toys. The most reinforced barriers. And yet, here they were, testing the limits of everything. And with each new leap, each new swipe, I could see how close we were to the edge. The edge of disaster. Bob rushes over to one of the control panels, frantically pressing buttons to stabilize the environment, but his efforts are futile. A sudden crash from across the room draws both their attention as the largest cub throws a heavy piece of equipment across the space like a rag doll. It lands with a deafening thud against the far wall, causing a chain reaction. Lights flicker. The force fields hum loudly as they struggle to stay intact under the pressure. Captain Lawson, gritting his teeth, barely containing the panic in his voice. Bob, get those fields back up, now. Bob nods, his face pale as he rushes to the panel. But the damage is already done. One of the cubs has already begun to scale a nearby structural column, and with every movement, the metal groans under its weight. It reaches the top and lets out a triumphant screech, its tail swishing with excitement. The other cubs immediately follow suit, their actions synchronized in a display of raw, untamed coordination. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice darkening. This wasn't play anymore. This wasn't even chaos. This was a test of every boundary we thought we'd set. And I realized, with a sudden jolt of cold awareness, that the real challenge was just beginning. As the cubs continue their relentless exploration, tearing through the room with a sense of purpose, Captain Lawson and Bob are left standing, watching the destruction unfold. The air is thick with tension, the sounds of breaking equipment echoing like a warning. Bob, out of breath, barely holding back a nervous laugh. Well, at least we know they are alive. Captain Lawson doesn't respond, his focus entirely on the cubs as they continue to leap, pounce, and tear through the room. He knows there's no turning back now. No amount of preparation can undo the wildness of nature itself. And with that, the real work keeping them under control has only just begun. The room, thick with the hum of strained force fields and the faint crackle of overloaded containment systems, suddenly falls into an eerie stillness. For a split second, everything seems to pause like the universe itself is holding its breath. Then, the blaring sound of an emergency alert rips through the tension, shattering the fragile peace that had begun to settle over the chaos. Computer voice, cold, mechanical. Emergency. Code red. Smuggler's intrusion detected. Sector 9. All personnel alerted. The sound of the announcement cuts through the room like a blade, and in that moment, the cubs freeze. Their small bodies, still twitching with the last remnants of playful energy, go utterly still. The quiet click of their claws against the floor is the only sound left. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice tight. That wasn't supposed to happen. Not now. Not with everything else in disarray. But there it was, an alert that could change everything. Smugglers. Infiltrating the station, right under our noses. The worst part? I knew we weren't ready for this. Not with the cubs still running wild, tearing apart the place. For a moment, Lawson's mind races, assessing the situation, trying to piece together what was happening. But then, as the sirens wail in the distance, something in the cubs' posture changes. The playfulness in their eyes is replaced by something colder, sharper. They sniff the air, their heads turning as if catching a scent, their bodies becoming taut with focused energy. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice suddenly aware. That's when I realized it. The cubs weren't just playing anymore. They weren't just wreaking havoc for fun. They were hunting. And that, I understood all too well, was a problem. The largest cub, its dark eyes gleaming, lowers itself into a predatory crouch, its body sleek and tense like a coiled spring. The other cubs follow suit, their movements synchronized, their focus entirely fixed on something or someone out of sight. The air in the room shifts, as if the temperature drops several degrees, and Lawson feels the weight of the change settle over him like a shadow. Captain Lawson, narrating, breath-catching. Predators. That's what they were. I'd seen the way they moved, the way they watched the world. These weren't innocent little creatures who just wanted to play. They were born hunters, instinctively aware of threats before we could even process them. And right now, we were the prey. The second cub snarls low in its throat, a sound so deep and guttural that it vibrates through the walls. Its eyes flicker toward the door, where the faint sound of hurried footsteps echoes in the distance. The cubs shift, positioning themselves like a pack of wild animals sensing danger. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice more urgent now. That's when I saw it, something moving outside the room. A shadow. Just a flicker at first, but unmistakable. And then, another scent. This one stronger, pungent, metallic. The smugglers were close. Too close. And the cubs, they'd already picked up on it. Captain Lawson's heart races as he watches the cubs, their primal instincts now fully engaged. They begin to fan out, each one moving with silent precision, using the room's corners as cover. Their behavior isn't random, it's coordinated, planned. They were preparing for a hunt. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice low. They were tracking them. The smugglers. Those idiots had no idea what they were about to face. One of the cubs, Kevin, the smallest but perhaps the most clever, narrows its eyes and inches toward the door. Its claws click against the floor, sharp and deliberate. It pauses, its head tilting slightly as it picks up on the vibrations in the station's metal floors, the faint echo of someone moving in the corridors outside. Captain Lawson, narrating, panic creeping into his tone. Whatever happened next, I knew I had to stop it. These cubs weren't just running wild anymore. They were hunting something. And if they found those smugglers before we did, well, I didn't want to think about what would happen then. The cubs begin to move toward the door, silently, with the deadly precision of apex predators. Captain Lawson reaches for the COMM panel, but his hands tremble slightly as he presses the button. The station's automated systems respond, but there's no time to call for reinforcements. No time for anything but stopping the cubs. Captain Lawson, shouting to Bob, "Get to the security panels. Now. We can't let them get loose." Bob nods, rushing toward the console, but it's clear the cubs are faster. They've already made their decision, there's no stopping them now. Lawson watches in helpless awe as the cubs, instinctively working together, prepare to track down the smugglers. Their eyes are alive with the hunt. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice barely above a whisper. And there I was, caught in the middle of it. Trying to keep these deadly cubs from destroying everything, and realizing that they might just save the day, in their own terrifying way. The stakes were higher now than ever. Not just for us, but for the entire station. As the cubs move out of sight, their quiet but swift movements slipping through the room like shadows, Captain Lawson can only hope that they find the smugglers before the smugglers can do any more damage. The air in the recreation module is thick with a tense silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of the station's machinery. For a brief moment, the sounds of destruction and chaos from earlier fade into the background as Captain Lawson watches the cubs move, their movements eerily synchronized, as if each one knows exactly where to go and when. His heart begins to pound. Something about this feels wrong, almost too calculated. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a growing sense of dread. I should have known. I should have seen it earlier. The cubs, these wild, chaotic creatures, they were moving like trained predators. There was no hesitation. No randomness in their actions. They were hunting. And they weren't just running amok anymore. They had a purpose. The largest cub, its muscles rippling under its thick, armored scales, steps forward with terrifying grace. Its eyes, once playful, are now sharp and focused. Its nostrils flare as it sniffs the air, the scent of the smugglers lingering faintly in the environment. With a soft growl, it turns to the others, as if issuing a silent command. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice steady but tense. They were no longer just playing. They weren't just tearing apart toys or testing the walls. They were hunting a target, tracking it with the precision of the most seasoned hunters. They moved in a pattern, almost methodical in their approach, like a pack working together to corner prey. Each cub was covering a different section of the station, each one silently coordinating with the others as if they shared a singular mind. The cubs move in perfect synchrony, their steps silent, their bodies low to the ground as they stalk through the dim corridors. Their claws click softly against the floor, barely audible, but every step is deliberate. They fan out, each cub taking a different route as they begin to systematically cover the major cargo routes, their eyes scanning the environment with laser focus. Captain Lawson, narrating, realization dawning. Every instinct told me this wasn't just coincidence. The cubs were tracking something or someone. The smugglers, hidden somewhere within the labyrinth of the station's cargo bays, didn't stand a chance. They were being hunted. And they didn't even know it yet. The camera follows the cubs as they move through the twisting, metallic hallways of the station. Their eyes glow faintly in a dim light, a reflection of the predatory focus within them. Their movements are sharp, almost mechanical, as they shift seamlessly from one position to another, never missing a beat. There's an unspoken coordination between them, a silent understanding of the task at hand. Meanwhile, the smugglers, unaware of the impending danger, move hastily through the cargo routes. They try to keep to the shadows, their movements hurried, their breaths heavy with fear. They are sweating now, their nerves starting to fray. The sound of the cubs' soft growls echoes faintly in the distance, a warning they fail to hear. Captain Lawson, narrating, urgency in his voice. They didn't realize it yet, but the smugglers were walking right into a trap. Every time they thought they'd found a place to hide, a new cub appeared, silently moving into position. Like pieces on a chessboard, the cubs were closing in methodically, relentlessly. The cubs begin to move faster, their speed increasing as they close in on the smuggler's last known location. The camera shifts to show one of the smugglers stumbling into a narrow corridor, a dead end. The last remnants of confidence fade from his face as he turns to look around, realizing too late that he has nowhere to go. His breath catches in his throat as the soft, heavy footsteps of the cubs grow louder. Captain Lawson, narrating, a slight edge of tension creeping into his voice. They were cornered. Trapped. There was no escape now. The cubs had them in their sights, and once they'd made the kill, nothing would stop them. It was almost beautiful, in a way how nature's most primal instincts could be so perfectly executed. And yet, as the cubs closed in, I realized there was more at stake than just catching these smugglers. The balance of everything was shifting, and I wasn't sure we could handle what came next. The smugglers begin to panic, their movements erratic as they search for a way out. But every route they take only brings them closer to the cubs. Their backs pressed against the cold metal of the walls, their eyes wild with fear, they can do nothing but wait. The cubs are closing in from all sides, and there's no escape from the trap they've been caught in. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. These cubs, these creatures weren't just powerful. They were efficient. They were a force of nature, moving with an instinct so pure, so deadly, that even the most seasoned predators in the galaxy couldn't hope to match them. And as the smuggler's fate hung in the balance, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe at what I was witnessing. But then, I also couldn't shake the feeling that I had no control anymore. The cubs had taken over. And they were about to show us just how powerful they truly were. The cold, sterile corridors of the station seemed to stretch on forever as the smugglers pressed their backs against the walls, their panicked breaths filling the otherwise quiet space. The air is thick with a scent of sweat and desperation. They know they've run out of time, that they are no longer just hunted but trapped in the very jaws of the predators they had no idea they were up against. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice cold and calculating. The smugglers had thought they could slip by unnoticed, like shadows creeping through the station's underbelly. But shadows don't last when you're being hunted by apex predators. These smugglers? They were nothing more than prey now, and they knew it. Their desperate scramble to escape had only led them deeper into the cub's trap. The smugglers, disheveled and frantic, glanced nervously at each other. Their hands tremble, shifting from their pockets to the walls as they try to find an escape, but they know there is no way out. Not with the cubs circling, their eyes gleaming with deadly intent. Smuggler 1, voice shaking, pleading. Please, we don't want any trouble. We didn't mean for things to go this far. Just let us go, and we'll disappear. You'll never hear from us again. Just call off your monsters. The smuggler's voice cracks as he takes a hesitant step back, his eyes flicking nervously toward the cubs, who are now silently closing in. Kevin, the smallest of the cubs, locks eyes with him, and in that moment, it's clear the cub knows exactly what the smuggler is trying to do. Kevin's head tilts slightly, studying the smuggler like a cat inspecting prey. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice steady but filled with authority. They thought pleading would save them. They thought they could bargain with me. But I had the evidence, the hard, undeniable truth of their actions. They were already caught, and no amount of begging was going to change that. Captain Lawson steps forward, his shadow falling over the smugglers. His eyes narrow as he glances from one to the other, his gaze cold and unwavering. The smugglers know it's too late for negotiation. They are trapped, cornered, with no more cards to play. Captain Lawson, sternly. Enough. You've already done enough damage. You're not walking away from this. Now, explain yourselves. What were you planning to do with the cargo? Who hired you? The smugglers exchange panicked glances, their lips trembling. They know that whatever they say now won't change the inevitable. But still, one of them tries to speak, his voice low and shaking. Smuggler 2, desperate. We were hired by a syndicate. A powerful one. We didn't know what was in the cargo, just that we had to get it to a certain location. But we didn't mean to. The smuggler's words are cut off by a soft click. It's Kevin, the small cub, who's now moved closer to the group. In a single, swift motion, Kevin's sharp teeth close around the handle of a weapon. One of the smugglers had been foolish enough to keep it in his pocket. In a blink, the cub's jaws snap shut, and the weapon is gone, lifted as if by an invisible hand, now clenched firmly between Kevin's teeth. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a faint, grim smile. Efficiency. That's what they were. No hesitation. Kevin Small, seemingly harmless, had just demonstrated the deadly precision of the Nexus predators. A single bite, and the weapon was in his grip. No struggle. No wasted motion. Just the pure, calculated instinct of a predator. The smugglers stare in shock, their eyes wide as Kevin lifts his head slowly, showing them the weapon now held in his jaws. His eyes, cold and unblinking, remain fixed on them as he steps back, the weapon still gripped between his sharp teeth. The tension in the room is palpable, the air charged with a sense of inevitability. Smuggler 1, voice trembling, almost pleading. Please, you don't understand. We weren't trying to hurt anyone. We just had to deliver the cargo. Please, don't let the cubs, don't let them. But Captain Lawson interrupts, his voice as cold as steel. Captain Lawson, with finality. Save it. I have everything I need. And your fate? It's already sealed. The smugglers cower, realizing there's no way out now. The cubs, silent, focused, and poised for action, stand like shadowy sentinels around them, waiting for a command. Lawson watches them for a long moment, his hand slowly reaching for the COMM device at his belt. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice low and resolute. They didn't understand. They never would. But the cubs, they understood. They knew when to strike. And right now, they were waiting for me. They weren't the monsters in this story. Not anymore. As Lawson calls for security, his gaze remains fixed on the smugglers, who now realize, with a sinking feeling, that they are no longer in control. They are prey, and Lawson, though a human, has been their unintentional hunter. The cubs, in their silent, predatory way, have already done the job. The smugglers stand pressed against the cold, unforgiving walls of the narrow corridor, their backs trembling with the weight of the cubs' unrelenting gaze. The air between them is thick with tension, charged with the raw, primal energy of the creatures closing in on them. There's no escape now. No room to maneuver. The cubs have them cornered, and every instinct tells the smugglers that they are about to become prey. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice steady, tinged with disbelief. It's strange, isn't it? How quickly the roles reversed. The smugglers who had once been predators, slipping through the cracks of the station, now found themselves as the hunted. And what hunted them were creatures born of nature's most brutal laws. The cubs didn't need to say a word. Their movements were enough to let the smugglers know, escape wasn't an option. The cubs, now fully in control, move in perfect synchronization, their eyes never leaving the smugglers. Their predatory focus is unwavering, each cub positioning itself like a living wall, closing the gaps with quiet precision. The smallest cub, Kevin, stands poised just a few feet away, its body low and ready to spring. It watches the smugglers with the intensity of a seasoned hunter. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a hint of dark admiration. These cubs weren't just playing anymore. They were disciplined, trained by instinct and necessity. Every move they made was calculated, coordinated. They had cornered the smugglers in a way that even the most experienced predator would envy. One of the smugglers, his breath ragged and uneven, steps back, but he's met with the cold, unyielding eyes of another cub, its sharp claws glinting in the dim light as it shifts forward. The smuggler freezes, his entire body locking up as he feels the weight of the situation sink in. He knows, one wrong move, and it could be over. Smuggler 1, pleading, voice barely a whisper. Please, don't let them. But the cubs don't respond. They don't need to. The smallest of them, Kevin, takes a slow, deliberate step forward, its eyes flickering between the two smugglers. A low growl rumbles in the cub's chest, deep and resonant, as it begins to circle its prey, ensuring no escape route remains. The other cubs, just as silent, follow suit, keeping their positions as they tighten the circle around the criminals. Captain Lawson, narrating, watching with a sense of grim realization. To the smugglers, this must have felt like the end. And perhaps, for them, it was. In the presence of these predators, there was no need for force. No need for violence. The cubs were playing a different kind of game. And the smugglers had already lost. Captain Lawson, standing at the entrance to the corridor, observes the scene unfold with a sense of detached understanding. He knows the cubs won't make a move unless they are provoked. Their stillness is part of their strategy, the calm before the storm. Finally, he reaches for his communicator, his voice steady as he calls for security. Captain Lawson, firmly into the COMM device. This is Captain Lawson. We have 2 smugglers cornered in Cargo Bay 9. The cubs have secured them. Requesting immediate security support for detention. As he finishes speaking, the smugglers exchange a look of desperation. There's no time left. They've been outmaneuvered, outplayed. They drop their weapons, unspoken surrender in their eyes as the cubs move closer, their jaws still glinting with hunger, though they make no move to strike. The predators have captured their prey. Captain Lawson, narrating, a faint edge of awe in his voice. Somehow, it was over. The smugglers, once so confident in their ability to slip past security, had been taken down by creatures who had no concept of mercy. Only instinct. And in that moment, it wasn't about winning. It was about survival. The cubs had ensured that their prey would never escape. The sound of footsteps echoes down the corridor as the station's security team arrives, their boots thudding against the metal floor. They take the smugglers into custody, their hands shaking from both fear and disbelief as they glance nervously at the cubs who stand, silent and still, watching them with unblinking eyes. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice softened by the weight of the situation. I couldn't help but wonder, as the smugglers were led away, if this would be the last time we'd see a display of such precision and power. The cubs were more than just wild creatures, they were natural-born hunters. And I was beginning to realize that humanity had a role to play in this dangerous, unpredictable galaxy. A role that, for better or worse, would involve them. The cubs, their task completed, begin to retreat into the shadows of the station. Their silent departure leaves an unsettling calm in their wake, one that reminds Captain Lawson just how fragile their control over the situation truly is. The sounds of the smugglers' muffled protests fade as they are escorted away by station security. The corridor, once filled with tension and the frantic movements of criminals, now feels unnervingly calm. The cubs, their task complete, stand motionless in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a quiet satisfaction. Captain Lawson and Bob, still processing the events, stand at the entrance, watching as the smugglers are taken away. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a sense of disbelief. Sometimes, you're left wondering how things came to be. How a chaotic series of events can unfold into something that seems almost inevitable. The smugglers? Gone. Their plan unraveled. And the culprits? Not human. Not even remotely civilized in the way we think of it. No, the culprits were the cubs, wild creatures who, by instinct, had saved us all. And somehow, they had done it without even trying. Captain Lawson's gaze flickers to the cubs, who remain still, as if unaware of the profound effect their actions have had. The smallest of the cubs, Kevin, sits closest to the shadows, its head slightly tilted as if it's already forgotten the entire ordeal. The cub's movements, though precise and deadly just moments ago, now seem relaxed, almost innocent in the stillness. Bob, chuckling softly, shaking his head. You know, I thought we were done for, Lawson. I thought we'd be scraping up the pieces after that mess. But look at them. They've got it all figured out, don't they? Bob leans against the wall, his arms crossed, watching the cubs with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The playfulness in their eyes is still present, but there's an underlying discipline to their movements. It's as if the chaos from earlier has settled into something calculated. Captain Lawson, narrating, his tone still filled with awe. I couldn't help but agree with Bob. These cubs, these unpredictable, chaotic creatures had done something none of us could have imagined. They hadn't just followed instinct. They had displayed something more. Something remarkable. Coordination. Discipline. A level of precision that left me stunned. The cubs begin to move again, their actions fluid and almost graceful as they start to explore the area around them. They are not tearing apart walls or attacking anything in sight. Instead, they simply inspect the space, their curiosity piqued by the unfamiliar surroundings. Despite their earlier behavior, they are no longer acting like the reckless animals they had seemed to be. There's an order to them now, something far more controlled. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a touch of admiration. They had learned, somehow, to adapt. To understand that this wasn't a place for destruction. To see that their task had been completed, and now, it was time to move on. It was impressive, to say the least. Bob watches the cubs, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Bob. They might be small, but they've got the whole pack mentality thing down. Did you see how they moved earlier? Like they were one creature, one unit. And now, they're just chill. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice a mix of admiration and disbelief. And that was the strangest part of all. Despite everything, despite the destruction and the chaos, these cubs had shown something we hadn't expected. They weren't just animals. They were more. They were intelligent, disciplined, and far more capable than anyone had given them credit for. Captain Lawson pauses, turning back to look at the cubs, who are now sitting together in a calm, almost peaceful manner, as if they've been through a great ordeal themselves. The earlier tension has disappeared, replaced by an eerie tranquility. Lawson's mind races as he reflects on the unexpected outcome of the day. Captain Lawson, who knew that a few cubs could do what a whole team of soldiers couldn't. They turned an entire crisis around. They solved a galactic problem, without even knowing it. We thought we were dealing with chaos. What we got instead was control. The cubs, now resting in the corner of the room, seemed to radiate a quiet satisfaction, as if content with the role they've played. Lawson stands there for a moment, taking it all in, the absurdity of the day, the unexpectedness of the outcome, and the strange admiration he feels for these small but fierce creatures. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a final sigh. In the end, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. We had been saved by the last thing I would have expected. But in a way, that was the most fitting end to this entire ordeal. The cubs, mischievous and wild as they were, had proven themselves to be far more than just dangerous. They had become protectors, hunters, and, in the strangest way, our saviors. As Lawson and Bob stand in the quiet of the station, the cubs finally begin to curl up in a corner, their playful energy settling into a restful calm. The threat has passed. The smugglers are gone. And in this bizarre twist of fate, the cubs have not only survived, they have emerged victorious. The station's hum seems to settle into a more familiar rhythm, the tension dissipating as the aftermath of the crisis fades into the quiet corridors. Captain Lawson stands in a dimly lit chamber, his gaze drifting toward the distant view of the galaxy visible through the window. A sense of calm has returned to Omega 7, but beneath that calm, a new realization stirs within him, one that could reshape humanity's role in the galaxy. Captain Lawson, narrating, voiced thoughtful. Sometimes, the universe throws you a curveball. You think you're on one path, and then, unexpectedly, everything shifts. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission, a chance to mediate, to keep the peace, had turned into something far more. And as the dust settles, I can't help but wonder if this, in its own strange way, was the galaxy's way of showing us a new path forward. His eyes turn back to the room, where the cubs rest now, calm and still, their energy spent after the hunt. They lie in a pile of soft cushions, their movements slow and deliberate as they breathe in deep, rhythmic intervals. The chaos has melted away, leaving behind a strange peace. Lawson's mind works quickly, as it always does in these moments. He begins to formulate an idea, one that had never crossed his mind before. Bob enters, his footsteps soft on the metallic floor. He stops beside Lawson, his gaze also drawn to the cubs, who seem so innocent now. A curious, almost serene silence fills the room. Bob, breaking the silence, a hint of humor in his voice. "Well, I'll be damned. Who would have thought we'd end up here, huh? Smugglers taken down, station saved, and the cubs. They look like they just had a nice nap." Captain Lawson, smiling faintly, his tone turning serious. "Not just a nap, Bob. They did something remarkable today. Something we didn't expect, something that's bigger than all of us. These cubs, wild as they are, they showed us a side of themselves we hadn't seen. They didn't just survive, they thrived. And that got me thinking, what if we could use this?" Bob raises an eyebrow, intrigued but uncertain. "Bob, use this? You mean, what, turn these cubs into some sort of galactic law enforcement? A tactical daycare?" Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice tinged with excitement. "I'm not talking about that. But think about it. What if we could help other species with dangerous young learn how to handle their offspring? We've seen how effective humanity can be in nurturing and managing these creatures. What if we could formalize that? Turn it into something that benefits the galaxy as a whole?" Bob watches him carefully, the gears turning in his head. He's not sure what Lawson is driving at, but the more he thinks about it, the more intrigued he becomes. "Bob, so, you're saying, humans could teach other species how to handle their dangerous young? Like, a training program?" Captain Lawson nods slowly, his eyes fixed on the cubs, whose rhythmic breathing is the only sound filling the room. It's an idea that feels both absurd and inevitable, a way for humanity to carve out a unique and valuable role in the galaxy. Captain Lawson, narrating, with conviction. "Exactly. Think about it. Every species has its predators. Some grow to become galactic powers, others simply survive. But what if we could help them coexist? What if humans could serve as the bridge, training other species in the care and management of their most dangerous offspring? From the smallest predators to the fiercest, we could teach them how to manage, how to nurture and train the young of these powerful creatures." Captain Lawson turns to Bob, his voice more intense now, as he imagines the possibilities. "Captain Lawson, we're already known for our ability to tame the untamable. Look at what happened here. These cubs, unpredictable and deadly, became part of the solution, not the problem. If we formalize this, we could offer a unique service, one that no one else in the galaxy can provide. A program for managing dangerous young, for taming chaos before it consumes a species. And it could make humanity invaluable in a way no one ever expected." Bob's expression shifts, now genuinely considering the idea. His skepticism slowly gives way to curiosity, as he begins to see the potential in Lawson's proposal. "Bob, you're serious about this, aren't you?" Captain Lawson, narrating, voice steady. "I am. The Cubs showed us something today. Not just their power, but their potential. And it's clear that this is bigger than us. Bigger than Omega-7. Humanity can play a part in this galaxy, one that we've never even imagined. But to do that, we need to formalize this program. We need to take it beyond just our experience here. It's time to turn this chaos into something that will benefit every species across the stars." Bob takes a long breath, staring at the Cubs, who are now peacefully resting in the corner. He nods slowly, the weight of the idea settling in. "Bob, well, if anyone can pull it off, it's you, Lawson. I'll back you up on this." Captain Lawson smiles, but there's something in his expression now, a sense of purpose, of quiet excitement. He knows this idea has legs, and that it could very well change the future of humanity in the galaxy. Captain Lawson, narrating, with a new sense of determination. "I'm not just talking about taming creatures, Bob. This is about fostering understanding, building bridges where none exist. If we can make this work, maybe we'll finally find our place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as diplomats, but as caretakers, protectors, and, in some strange way, as the guardians of the wild." As the camera lingers on the Cubs, their peaceful slumber is stark contrast to the chaos they've just caused, Captain Lawson feels a shift, a quiet but powerful certainty that this is just the beginning. The galaxy, with all its wonders and dangers, is open to them now. And this strange, unexpected twist of fate has revealed a new path for humanity to walk. The corridor is still, the hum of the station's energy systems now a background whisper in the quiet aftermath of the chaos. The Cubs, no longer the wild, destructive forces they once were, sit calmly at the side of their parents. Their sleek forms, once bursting with frenetic energy, now seem almost serene, their sharp eyes scanning the space around them with an unsettling calm. The parents, the towering Nexus predators, stand protectively over them, their eyes filled with an emotion almost foreign to such a fearsome species, gratitude. Captain Lawson, narrating, his voice softer, reflective. They are leaving now. The Cubs, with their wild instincts and chaotic energy, are headed back to the safety of their home. And for once, the galaxy feels a little less dangerous. But there's something different about them now, something that wasn't there when they first arrived. Ambassador T-Cross steps forward, her massive form looming over Lawson, but her presence is different now. There is no tension, no threat. Only a quiet understanding. She lowers her head slightly, a gesture of respect, a rare sign of humility from one of the galaxy's most powerful species. Ambassador T-Cross, her voice deep, but warm with appreciation. Captain Lawson, we thank you. You and your species have proven something extraordinary today. Your humans have done what many thought impossible. You have shown not only your strength, but your ability to adapt, to nurture, to care for the young of dangerous species. You have earned our trust, and we are willing to accept your proposal." Her words hang in the air, and for a brief moment, Lawson is taken aback. The weight of what has just been said settles over him like a heavy mantle. What started as a simple assignment managing a diplomatic station had turned into something far more significant. Something that could reshape humanity's future. Captain Lawson, narrating, voice tinged with awe. "I had come into this mission thinking it was just another day. A negotiation, a few talks, and then back to the usual grind. But today, humanity had found its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as diplomats, but as something else entirely. Caretakers. Guardians. Teachers." Ambassador T-Crow's gaze lingers on the cubs, and then back at Lawson, her eyes gleaming with something akin to respect, a rare sight for one of her kind. "Ambassador T-Crow, your proposal, this training program you speak of, is one that could benefit not only the Nexus Confederation but all species. We have watched as your humans interacted with the cubs. You managed them with a grace and discipline that we, with all our strength, could not provide. This facility you propose, we are willing to support it. You will have our endorsement." As she speaks, the cubs stir, their eyes now focusing on Lawson for the first time since their chaotic rampage. They approach cautiously, their movements fluid and controlled. One of the cubs, Kevin, steps forward, its head tilting slightly as it seems to study Lawson, as if acknowledging the role he played in their unusual development. Captain Lawson, narrating, his tone a mix of awe and recognition. "And there it was, an unspoken understanding between us and them. Between humanity and these apex predators. The cubs had been the catalyst. But this proposal? It wasn't just about them. It was about what humanity could offer the galaxy. We had been thrust into the role of guardians, protectors of the wild. And in that moment, I understood, we weren't just managing danger. We were shaping the future." The scene shifts to show the first outlines of the facility being sketched out on a holographic display in the station's planning room. Plans for the Galactic Institute for the Care and Training of Dangerous Creatures begin to take shape, a place where species could learn how to handle their most dangerous young, a place that would be a cornerstone for future interspecies cooperation. Captain Lawson, narrating, a final breath of realization. Omega-7 would become the hub for this new initiative. And humanity, once thought to be the wild card in the galaxy, had just found a new role, one we had never expected but now could not avoid. A role that would change the way we interacted with every species, every dangerous creature in the galaxy. We were no longer just visitors. We were caretakers, protectors, and in some strange way, the galaxy's guardians of the wild. As the cubs disappear into the shadows, their parents following close behind, Lawson feels a sense of quiet satisfaction. The work ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, It feels like the future is within reach, a future where humanity's greatest strength lies not in its power or its politics, but in its ability to nurture, to adapt, and to protect. As the events of Omega-7 unfold, one thing becomes clear: humanity has a newfound place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as caretakers and guardians of the wild. The Cubs, once seen as chaotic, have proven themselves to be the key to a larger intergalactic responsibility. What began as a diplomatic crisis ends with an unexpected proposal, one that could reshape humanity's role in the galaxy's future. Captain Lawson's surprising conclusion to this bizarre day reveals that sometimes, the universe's greatest challenges lead to the most unexpected solutions. And as Omega-7 begins planning for a groundbreaking new initiative, humanity steps into a new era, prepared to help other species raise and protect their most dangerous offspring. This is only the beginning of a thrilling new chapter in the vast story of the galaxy. What will the future hold for humans, the Cubs, and the many other species who share the stars? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the journey has only just begun. Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. Be sure to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below. What do you think of humanity's new role? Could this be the start of something much bigger? Stay tuned for more, and remember, the galaxy holds more secrets than we could ever imagine.